Ahsoka is a spin-off of The Mandalorian taking place after the events of Star Wars Episode 6. Dave Filoni created and wrote the series. The first two episodes just came out August 22nd. The first episode is called Part 1, Master and Apprentice. The second episode is called Part 2, Toil and Trouble. Remember when Bob Iger, from the CEO of Disney, came out last month and was like, there are too many MCU shows, too many Star Wars shows.
He said he was going to scale them down.
We're going to scale them down. I haven't seen the evidence yet, because not only is Ahsoka coming out, but there's going to be another show that crosses the same timeline as The Mandalorian, and then all three of them are going to sync up. It's going to be its own Defenders.
And what about Andor? Because I know Andor Season 2, I think, is pushed back because of the writer's strike, but that's still going to be happening, right?
If I remember correctly, I don't think Andor has the same timeline. I think he exists in a different time in the Star Wars universe. I could be wrong, but that's what... And also, Andor was probably my favorite thus far of all the Star Wars series.
Really? Even The Mandalorian?
Yes, and we discussed this during the episode that we talked about Andor. The only series, Obi-Wan, I think, was a little bit of a letdown for me. How about you?
I think you mean Kenobi, right?
Yeah, Kenobi. Yeah, it was just me, and he was my character.
I've started to, ever since Kenobi, kind of watch Star Wars films with low expectations.
Was it the Kumail Nanjiani factor? Was that the thing that just, wrote you off?
Kumail Nanjiani factor.
Wasn't he in there?
No, yeah, I mean, he was, but I'm saying it wasn't just because of him. It's just that I feel like with Marvel and Disney, I agree with Bob Iger. There are way too many shows with them now coming out.
And now they're making a new movie, too.
Do you remember in 2015 when The Force Awakens came out?
Yes.
It was huge. Like, the news
records.
The news was playing the trailer for it.
It was my fantasy football team name.
Everybody was excited to see this film. And then it took 8 years, and now it seems like just all Star Wars properties are just kind of like they vary in quality.
But Ahsoka kind of takes us back to grand old space opera. That's how I felt, at least. We got the epic scale galactic storytelling, adventure, drama, orchestral backing. The text crawl is back too.
Yep.
It's a little different. It's red and it doesn't go backwards.
Yeah, it wasn't coming out on the screen.
Yeah, and it didn't have that bomb, bomb, but it tells us that Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn is missing and that he can galvanize the Imperial troops and take down the New Republic, which is just starting to work things out and get the planets running and everything. So that would be it reminded me a lot of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, because the story there was that it was after the war, Sauron has fallen, and he's still out there. But the only one who seems to care is this tenacious, stubborn woman who's going after him before the bad guys can reassemble and take over everything.
Both
again.
are, it's about to start a war.
So Ahsoka Tano has been chasing down leads, and she finds Morgan Elsbeth, who is a witch. And because this is a good time to point out that I haven't seen all of Star Wars, everything it has to offer. I don't know what's canon at this point. I haven't ever seen any of the cartoon TV shows or any of the ones that came out in the aughts.
Yeah.
I don't even think I could answer a lot of the questions about the original series besides just the basic plot elements.
Surface level,
So, and how about you? Is that kind of the same?
Yeah.
So
I haven't seen the back half of Season 2 of The Mandalorian or Season 3, which, as I apparently learned, would have probably helped with this show because some stuff in Mandalorian, I think in the finale of Season 2, deals with the same type of characters.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is if you're looking for a deep dive into the Star Wars universe dictionary and encyclopedia of knowledge, that's not us. We're just here to give our impressions on the first episode and the second episode.
So what would you give, just starting off, what would you give Ahsoka?
Ahsoka?
Yes.
As a total? I liked it. I'm going to give it an 8.
Okay, well...
Yeah. Did you like it?
If it wasn't for the cinematic set design, music, costume, cinematography, and visual effects, I would possibly consider Ahsoka to be one of the worst shows of the year.
Okay. I mean, it's fair. You don't know some of the things that I do because I did the research on this one. Maybe I can convince you otherwise. I will admit that it is a little slow.
Yeah, that was my main problem with it, just the snail-like pacing. And it's sad because I like Star Wars. I like a lot of people in this show. Rosario Dawson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, David Tennant, who I think is in the Clone Wars, and I think might even possibly play the same character.
Might?
And
yes, of course he does.
And even...
He's not the only one.
And Clancy Brown. I know he shows up for only 3 minutes.
Also playing the same character he played in the show.
Yeah, and I think that the person that Clancy Brown talks to...
Introduced.
Same
guy from the show.
Dante Bosco?
Dante Bosco?
Zuko from Last Airbender. I didn't know if that was him or not. I thought that was the person that he was introducing.
All I know is the person that he introduced, the senator, is what you're saying? Yeah, it was the same guy from the show who voiced him.
Oh, okay, maybe. But I was just disappointed in the two. Let's just get into it. Can I talk about my summary?
The first scene, though, is what I thought would be pretty acceptable
The first 10 minutes of this show, I enjoyed. Yeah. I thought that this might be able to pull a Andor, because with Andor I came in with low expectations. And I thought that it was like mediocre to good.
Well, again, we have Morgan Elsbeth, who Ahsoka Tano has chased down and then gotten information from her and then left her on a ship to be like sent back to prison or something. And that ship gets boarded by a couple people pretending to be Jedi.
Baylan, Skull, and Shin Hati.
Yeah, and they're just a couple mercenary who end up killing a lot of people.
They slice and dice them, and it honestly reminded me of one of my favorite scenes in Rogue One, where Darth Vader is in that room and he just ends up taking out the whole entire ship, and it was brutal. The first 10 minutes, especially in that first scene, I was enjoying.
It felt like the theme was right. It felt like everything was going together. And then we get this Ahsoka, Indiana Jones, Tano movement because she's in a temple and she's seeking out a map.
It's funny. It reminded me a lot of Rey from The Force Awakens when you first see her. And that was one of my favorite parts of The Force Awakens. I think that the person who plays Rey was like the best part of those last 3 films.
Daisy Ridley?
Yeah, where you don't see her face at first and then she takes off the hood and then she's trying to find something of value so that she can make some money or so they can help them.
There really wasn't any suspense as to who we were watching, though.
Obviously.
It was obviously Ahsoka, and she ends up finding this orb that looks a lot like the Guardians of the Galaxy orb that what's his face?
Chris Pratt
finds.
Star-Lord.
Star-Lord finds in the first thing, and that got me thinking, I think Zoe Saldana could have played Rosario Dawson's character.
I actually was wondering if it was her for a second, and I was like, oh no, that's obviously Rosario
I've always confused Rosario Dawson with Tamara Taylor, the lady from Bones, because they look so much alike. But now I'm realizing also, Zoe Saldana, same thing. Then these droids show up. They try to take the orb from her, also like Guardians of the Galaxy.
They surround her. She takes them out one by one.
She takes them all out, and then what happens?
Then David Tennant, playing my favorite character. Hu Yang, the robot.
Same guy,
He's piloting the ship. Ahsoka is running away from the robots who are exploding.
Yeah, and they say, it's funny when a robot says self-destructing in 10 seconds, because usually you're like, why do they even put that in their programming?
Reminds me of Mission Impossible.
You would think that they wouldn't do that, because if they have any reason to self-destruct, it's because the thing around them is a threat. You wouldn't want to warn that threat. But I think the first person who said it was ordering the other 2 drones, or the droids.
Right.
So that's what made me forgive that. And so then they exploded. The planet looks like it was in... no one was going back to that temple afterwards. She jumps on the ship. And then, we meet Hu Yang, and he seems like a pretty interesting dude, because he's like, by the book, he's got a sense of humor, but he seems super old because he taught Jedi. Like, he was one of the original Jedi teachers.
He is a lot like the robot from Rogue One.
Okay, yeah. Wait, the one that I liked so much?
Yeah.
The one that was like...
I think your favorite character in that movie. Yes.
An excellent fighter in that movie, yes. Yeah. All right. The show we really ought to address, though, before we move too much further, is Star Wars Rebels, because a lot of fans, having seen these 2 episodes, think this show, Ahsoka, is just Star Wars Rebels Season 5.
That's a Disney XD show, right?
Yeah. It took place in it was played in the 2010s at some point. They actually used the Philharmonic in Prague to do the opening for that, so I was really curious if they used the same ones to do this show, but I wasn't able to figure that out. It took place a decade after Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Order 66, Anakin's turn to the dark side. In the original, I think, Clone Wars movie, that's when Ahsoka was presented as like a teenager, a Padawan or apprentice to Anakin. And then later on in the Rebel series, she was more of the leader. And then obviously you had Sabine, and you had Hera, and then you had Ezra, and just the whole group of them working together. But then at the end of the series, I think that's when Ezra, as we kind of learn in this episode, Master and Apprentice, that he and Thrawn are kind of thrown into this other galaxy place. It kind of often they're unknown, almost like in Supernatural, where in the end of the 5th season, when Sam jumps into hell with the with Lucifer, right?
Yes,
with his brother. And anyways, so they then do like a time jump, sort of Walking Dead style, and now we're suddenly at the end of the war and past the 6th movie, and so Ahsoka's older and Sabine has to be older, and there's a lot of questions, but a lot of people really like the fact that they seem to have kept everything from the first 4 seasons.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that is, I guess, where I kind of differ, because Sabine's character, and again, I haven't seen Rebels, but I found her character to be insufferable.
I did not
really
like her
did not
introduction
character.
at all. I agree with you. The first 20 minutes I thought were great. Then Sabine came around, and I was like, what show are we watching right now? This doesn't feel like Star Wars anymore.
It honestly, her introduction reminded me a lot of Hit Girl, but Hit Girl from Kick-Ass 2, especially the ending when she's on a motorcycle, because it almost seemed like they were going for the same tone with the pop song in the background, and then she's like doing Fast and Furious tricks.
I completely agree with you, because this is like my number one con. And it is kind of petty, because by the end she does sort of change herself by the end of episode 2. But her introduction, her look, her style, the rock music, it felt like they were trying to do a Captain Kirk Star Trek thing, where she was like having the leather jacket on.
The nod to the cop when she like upstages the other one.
And
by
the fact
ducking
that this
under
takes place post episode 6, and the previous series that she was in, Rebels, was before again after episode 3, means that she's not a teenager. And yet she's still acting with all the angst in the world.
Yes, she's
and
a very angsty character.
You would have thought that with all the trouble that Star Wars got in with the prequels and Anakin's angst as a teenager, that they would have tried to avoid that storyline as much as possible. But instead, you have someone who ends up sort of kind of like an arcane character.
I have in my notes that Sabine feels like the most teenage character in a mid to late 20-year-old woman's body, because she does the dumbest things in this episode.
She does. She doesn't follow any orders whatsoever.
And I guess I was also mad at Ahsoka, because she is the one that trained Sabine. That's supposed to be the backstory.
Well, not exactly, because she was supposed to be the one who trained Ezra, Ezra's the one who went missing. Sabine has always been just a Mandalorian. Right?
But wasn't Ahsoka, didn't she say that?
Yeah. It was supposed to be like in the background after, I guess, the first 4 seasons. She may have picked up the lightsaber and become like a Jedi Padawan. But like now I think that's when it became official at the end of the second episode.
My point is that she should know what Sabine is like. So when Ahsoka gives her the orb that is supposed to tell where General Thrawn is,
okay, so Ahsoka,
she should be able to tell that Sabine's going to take it.
I know, we're jumping ahead a little bit. So first we get the scene where Sabine is just off on her own, and that's her introduction. And then we get the scene from the bad guy's point of view where Balin, right? That's his name. Yeah. He sends Shin over his Padawan over to the same planet to go find Sabine. And at the same time, Ahsoka is told by one of her old friends, Hera, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, to go and also find Sabine, because she would be able to crack open as you were saying, she would be able to crack open the orb and tell them where the map led to. So she's like some sort of cryptographer. She has like a second sense. So that's exactly what Ahsoka does. But when she finds Sabine, there's obviously that reunion animosity because of the drama that fell out where I guess Ahsoka decided not to be her master anymore.
You've
and then
seen
also,
it in 1,000 different TV shows.
Yeah, until I understood the background to it, the reunion felt a little unnecessary. But once she gave her the orb, I think Ahsoka knew what was going to happen.
But when she comes back into the room, she's so surprised.
I know. She comes in there and she's like, oh my God, she left. But at the same time, I think in the back of her mind, she was still aware that is what had to happen. Like, it's just part of the Force, the Jedi Force, to know that, like, things have to happen. Fate has to happen in order for, like, things to work out in the end.
Can we talk about Ahsoka for a second?
Yeah.
I actually...
Want to talk about her hair?
Yeah, well, no, I want to talk about the character. I enjoyed her introductory scene, but I didn't see her as that great a character. Like, I thought it was mismarketed with the television name Ahsoka, because at least for the first episode, which is like an hour, you follow Sabine more than you do Ahsoka.
Mandalorian focused on the Mandalorian. Andor focused on Andor. Obi-Wan focused on Obi-Wan. And this show is not Ahsoka's show.
She's a secondary character.
It's Rebel Season 5. But for people who already liked her character, they liked her from that show, so I don't think they mind it as much. That said, for me, I do think we get enough of her, and it's not like she's completely absent, but I agree, it's more of a team show.
But even her character, and I guess that this is a character trait, but it's so calm. I felt like it was on the borderline of emotionless, that she doesn't actually ever freak out when, like, for example, at the very end of the episode, and I'm sure we'll get there, but Sabine loses the orb. You think that Ahsoka would be somewhat mad about it, but no, she says like a snarky comment
and
to
her
Sabine.
protege almost dies.
Yeah, at the beginning of the second episode, and that's about it. And it's hard for, I guess, the audience to to not to like connect with the character if the character is not echoing the audience's emotions.
I don't know if that's true, though, because if you think about her life, it started off many, many years ago. She was under the tutelage of an amazing Jedi who had so much talent, who then turned to the dark side, betrayed everything she ever stood for, and then Ahsoka had to go on the run, and then she distanced herself and said, I'm no longer going to be a Jedi. Then she hooks up with this team that she's made, and they go off on adventures. Suddenly, the team gets broken apart. She tries to tutor some of, like, a Sabine here, and then that doesn't work out. It just seems like she's old at this point, so she is wise, and she's not going to be fazed by too much.
But,
so,
like, literally fazed by nothing.
Yeah, but
so
she's a good fighter.
Yeah, yes, I mean, like, look, the fight scenes, I think, are done well. They're shot well. Yeah. I like them, but it's, like, as a character, you have so many scenes of her just speaking very slowly to either her friend, again, Elizabeth Winstead, Hera, I think her name is, or Sabine, and it doesn't seem like, like she's really taking anything into account except for just being calm.
Well, the thing is, though, you have to think, once Luke became a Jedi, he also became calmer. She's been a Jedi, or ex-Jedi, for a long, long time, and they asked her in an interview, I think Rosario Dawson talked about how instead of having that, like, young child to a grown adult transformation, this is more of a Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White transformation. Yeah, Gandalf the Grey was already super wise, and he couldn't be fazed by a lot, but at the same time, there was a difference between him beforehand and him after.
I see the comparison. Yes. I guess my point, how many episodes is this supposed to be first off? 8?
It's going to have 8 episodes.
Okay, and I mean, we're a quarter of the way there, and we're just now starting to get on the adventure, but I mean, like, Ahsoka, I just don't see how she's going to change that much throughout the 8 episodes.
But does she need to?
Well, if it's called Ahsoka, I feel like yes. In some ways, yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, so the end of the episode happens, and yes, we get this final battle between the two apprentices.
She's been able to crack the orb, and I did like the lightsaber scene. Yeah.
And Sabine pulls out her lightsaber, and then she's kind of rusty at it because she knows karate better. She has the Mandalorian fighting skills down, but she doesn't have her lightsaber abilities quite there yet. So Shin beats her. The thing about Shin, though, is I think she had the ability in that moment to kill Sabine, and she chose not to.
Well, she stabbed her.
She stabs her, but then she doesn't do the full slice, you know?
I mean,
like, a lot of people were pointing out what was the name of Obi-Wan's mentor, who the guy, like, Qui-Gon, or what's his name? Yeah, how that guy got killed by Darth Maul. Right? And how he died from just a simple stab wound. Well, you see a lot of Jedi, they do the full slash. And if she wanted to kill Sabine, which she easily could have, I think she would have done the full slash.
So they're saying that the villains, aren't really...
And she's also asking questions. Shin is asking Balon a lot of questions, which makes me think that she has to turn good eventually. Like, she's too curious and too, like, she wants a reason for everything, and all the real reason that Balon gives is that power.
Well,
they're
Balon,
going for power.
It doesn't even seem like he really wanted to kill or wants to kill Ahsoka, as we see in the end of the second episode, because it seems like he does.
There are so few
care
Jedi.
About the Jedis. He's talking about how there's
one. He was one of those little kids who was during Order 66 escaped. That's why he was taught by Huyang.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, like, deep lore in there. And then the second episode comes around. That's when we see that Sabine has recovered, and she tells Ahsoka about her findings. Ahsoka and Syndulla end up going to Corellian because when Ahsoka goes back to Sabine's apartment, and she finds a lead, she finds a robot there, and then they kill the robot, and then they're able to, kind of the same way they did in C-3PO and even R2-D2, they were able to, like, fix something, which then pulled out its memories.
Use the face, and they were able to encrypt it.
So they found out Corellian is where they needed to go, and that's supposed to be controlled by the New Republic, but when they get there, they find out that they've employed a lot of ex-Imperial staff.
Well, a quick question.
Yes.
Do you know why Hera is so big on Ahsoka trying to train Sabine again?
Because they were all part of the same team at one time. Before Hera, I think she's like a general now or something like that, but before, in the original TV show, they were all part of the same team.
I was agreeing with Ahsoka's points, though. Sabine, it's just, she's not immature. Ready in any way. I mean, to give the villains the main thing that you need to stop another war from happening, I mean, I guess that Sabine didn't know what was going to happen if this fell into the wrong hands. But still, I was agreeing more with Ahsoka than I was Hera.
Well, I think you are supposed to agree with her because she's the main character. And Sabine does have a growth by the end of the second episode. That's kind of what I'm saying, is that, yes, I didn't like her introduction. And yes, she was she made mistakes along the way. But by the end of of episode 2, it seems like she's put all that behind her. She's cut her hair. She's there to learn, and she's just going to be a better character now. So, I mean, like, the second episode doesn't even belong to her. I would say that it's mostly about this other planet where they go to Corellian. They're finding out more information about why Morgan Elsbeth, the witch, is using it still as a base of operations. And when they start questioning this Min Weaver guy, who's supposed to be the man in charge, the boss who shows them around the plant and how they're like repurposing things for the New Republic, and then it becomes very obvious once they get to the control room or the command room and they see one ship like about to leave.
Yeah.
And they're like, so what is on that ship? And it's like this highly sensitive data, which not even the commander or Hira's like security can get past. And then all these guys just jump up being like, for the Empire, and they just start firing bullets. And then suddenly Hira has to do like a Star Wars chase scene up into the atmosphere with this weird little R2-D2 guy named Chopper.
Chop, I think was the best addition to episode 2. He's a cross between BB-8 and R2-D2, but I did like his character.
You did like his character. So I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't, but the Rebel fans, those who have watched the whole series, 100% the biggest thing that they were thrilled to see was that Chopper was back and that his attitude was still as vindictive as it ended up being, because the first thing he asks is for them to blow up the ship so it can crash land in the planet, right?
Yeah.
And then she's like, we can't do that. And it's like, why not?
And you didn't like him for that.
I think I missed that joke. I think I wasn't reading the subtitles for that thing. But he just seemed like another version of an R2-D2 at first, and that's why I did. The other things that the Rebel fans like seemed to be Lothcat, which you saw a lot.
It's so strange how... I was just wondering why they didn't just put a regular cat in there. It would have been less expensive.
What? No, that's the guy from also the TV show, the original TV show. And then also one of my favorite parts of all Star Wars series is seeing the Mon Calamari, and there were a bunch of them. Those are the guys with the fish heads.
Right. Okay.
Fish head guys are really cool. And so they end the episode with them sticking a tracker on the ship that gets away with all the bad guys. And then also Sabine and Ahsoka starting to work together again.
Yes, right. The second episode ended where I thought that the first episode was going to end. That's what I mean when I was saying that the pacing was so slow for this thing. We're now a quarter of the way through, and it just seems I'm still a little confused on what the adventure is even really supposed to be at this point.
I mean, they're trying to find the portal that will find the main bad guy so that they can stop him, Thrawn, and then they're also looking for Ezra at the same time.
But at this point, the villains already have such a head start, right?
But they don't, because like. Apparently, that little tiny tracker is able to focus cross galaxy, which doesn't make as much sense technology-wise, but just let's take into a world that is accepting of witches and stuff. So, that's what's happening, and they just need to follow that thing, and then suddenly they'll be able to tack on to the next clue.
I don't know. The show to me, it's like, I did like the credits, though. I will say that the credits look cool with the visuals, and also the visual effects, and like I was saying, cinematography, it's cinematic, it's Star Wars. I like that part of it.
I like that there were new worlds brought to life. Yes, the special effects were there, the classic slide transitions, that intimidating opening, and Ray Stevenson and Ivana Sakno, those are the people playing Baylan, Skoll, and Shin Hati. And also Marek, all three bad guys. Marek was the lightsaber dude.
Okay, right.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
The guy who's sort of like Tron in the second movie. And he all three of them were super intimidating, super cool to look at. The Mon Calamari, Hu Yang, David Tennant, the two apprentice fight. I think Shin is definitely going to turn, but I'm going to enjoy watching that happen. And then I loved the "You're the worst Jedi" speech. Because when when Hu Yang was hanging out with Sabine all episode 2, and she was like, I'm terrible at this. I can't be a Jedi. And he's like, you are by far the absolute worst Jedi I've ever seen in my life. But you should still be a Jedi. I loved it because it was just like, you can't pick and choose. Somebody's got to be the worst, right?
But when it came to everything, I also put Hu Yang and Chop in my pros list. But when it came to everything else, even the dialogue I found to be average, and the characters and the plot, I just could not get into it. And that's why I'm going to give the first 2 episodes. And then there's potential, I will say that, for this show. There is potential. I could see it getting better. But
I'm going to have some cool cameos.
I'm going to give the 2 episodes 4.5 out of 10.
Pay attention, though, because in the future, where's this got to go? It's got to reveal where Ezra is. It's got to reveal where a big old battle with Thrawn, and they have to lose because there's no way that they're just going to defeat this big evil and then have the next set of Star Wars films come in. So like there's going to be tragedy waiting. There's going to be amazing cameos. Everybody's basically confirmed that Anakin Skywalker is going to be back as Hayden Christensen.
Well, I'd like to see that. Yeah.
That would be awesome to see. Also, the fact that we no longer have to see Sabine in her sort of teenage angst form makes me hopeful. Also, I am holding out hope, even though I know that in the cartoon series she never did it, but like, you know how you had General Grievous with the 4 lightsabers? Yes. And you know how Ahsoka's hair is kind of like sentient?
Yeah, that was strange.
Can you imagine if she at one point just throws up 2 lightsabers for her hair and then has 2 others?
Okay, that's not gonna.
That would be so cool. And yeah, just hints about stuff. I'm sensing a tone. If I have to gauge the Force, the bad guys are good enough where I think that this is going to end up paying off. This specific series, I think, is going to have a big old bang of a conclusion.
For me, I think that if Star Wars wants to gain back the audience that's kind of lost ever since 2015 or whenever, they need to have another Mandalorian-like show that was as good as The Mandalorian was in that first season and as big as it was, and I don't see Ahsoka doing that.
Yeah, if I'm just basing it off these 2 episodes, I may have given it a lower rating, but I'm going to give it an 8. Because of what I see the potential is.
What were the reviews for it?
The reviews are all over the place. It seems like the fans really like it, and it also seems like some of the critics do, but then there are also some that, complain about the pacing, say that if you haven't seen the Rebel series, you're really not going to like it.
I was going to say, it seems like this was made for people that like Star Wars Rebels or Star Wars The Clone Wars movie or television series. I can understand if you like it. I just never watched that stuff when I was a kid.
You don't have to defend it. No, it makes sense. One of the cons that I will cop to, because you said that the dialogue wasn't always there, is that there was this line, and the line itself isn't bad. I'm trying to remember exactly what it is, or at least find it here. Oh yes, I think Ahsoka says when it's not loyalty, it's greed. When they were on the planet at the end of episode 2, and Hera is like, look at all these people who are still working for the Imperial people. How can they be like that? How can they be so loyal to them? And then Ahsoka returns with, it's not loyalty, it's greed. But how can she say that when she was just in a room where a bunch of people just committed mass suicide yelling for the Empire? That doesn't sound like greed to me. That sounds like loyalty. So it just, one did not match on top of the other. Other than that, I did see the cast for this, and it's what made me like tune in. And I haven't seen everybody who's listed there. And I know one of my favorite people of all time for acting is hasn't shown up yet. So
I feel like from the cameos that you're saying, I don't know how it would be, but maybe like the Mandalorian or something shows up.
No,
like
it's
Pedro
a person who's playing a character who hasn't been in the Star Wars thing up till now. But I do know that for Thrawn, they are bringing back the person who voiced him as well to play that character, Lars Mikkelsen. So yeah, I think this series is going to come together. Even if you didn't like it, I would probably suggest skipping through or tuning in.
It seems like you're going to watch the rest of it, right?
I wasn't planning on watching more than maybe the last couple episodes, but I think that it satisfies what it needs to. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.